things increase our risk of breast cancer? Well, there's so many of them, but there's several of them that are very controllable, and I call those modifiable factors. Those are things we can do something about. When women in general struggle with weight, that's one of the things that we in this country have been struggling with more so than the other countries in this world. And we know that it stems from the foods. We can go all the way back to the beginning of time, and we can see that if we were foraging for our food and we were growing our own and picking it and getting it at the peak ripe freshness and just eating plants, then we wouldn't have the unnecessary hormones that we ingest when we eat meat and byproducts of animals that are grown or raised in an environment where they're so crowded, they have to use hormones to beef them up, to grow them quicker so they can turn them over, and they also have to use a lot of chemicals. So every time we ingest meat, we're ingesting what that animal had inside their flesh. Now, this isn't a vegan talk. This is a talk on breast cancer. If you were ever diagnosed with breast cancer, or one of your loved ones was diagnosed with breast cancer, it is imperative that they go to vegetarianism immediately. That's the best chance that you have at reversing the problems that started. And so if we know that if we were diagnosed with breast cancer, we would get off meat immediately, wouldn't it make sense that we should literally decrease perhaps the use? And it's not just meat, it's animal protein in general. Or be very choosy where you're getting your meat. Be choosy about where it is farmed, where it is raised, what they use to feed it, what they use to treat it, and know that you're getting free-range, farm-raised, healthy, clean meat to eat. And that will be a safer alternative. But there's also things that we do through our daily life that we don't even know is increasing our risk. How many of you know what a paraben is? Paraben. Have you ever seen a lotion that says paraben-free? You see it in cosmetics now. Everybody's making a big deal about parabens. Parabens are things that they put into our lotions, our moisturizers, our cosmetics, our shampoos, our hair gels, anything to prolong the shelf life of the product. But what happens when you put it on your skin, or you put it in your scalp, or you rub it anywhere on the body, it's ingested into that wonderful organ called our skin, and the body thinks it's a hormone. Interesting, right? So how many times per week do you lather yourself from head to toe with whatever beauty products you use as a routine? Think about it. What do you use for when you get into the shower and you're lathering up your body with the body wash, and then you're using shampoo and perhaps conditioner, and then after that you might put a hair gel or a mousse? All the cosmetics that we're using. Be very, very clear. It's a cumulative effect. So just like eating meat all the time and not being careful about those things or where you get the meat, it would be a cumulative effect over time that would put us more at risk. So using cosmetics that are not paraben-free once in a while isn't going to be a big deal. We're talking about the daily habits that we have. So these are modifiable things. You can learn about them, you can avoid them, and I do have a lot of literature up here, so after the talk you can come up, and I do have a list of things that are toxic compounds to avoid. And if you're like me, what happened to me is I had to go home and throw most of the stuff out. I had no idea what I was doing. And so you may be surprised. What about the plastics? How many know that plastics are a form of estrogen? Plastic bottles, plastic, and now we're hearing the letters PBA free, bisphenol, bisphenol, I don't know what's PBA free, BPA, yeah. And so what we're seeing now is that the companies are getting mindful of making things that will not leach the xenoestrogens out of the plastics. Be very selective when you're shopping for plastics. You want the BPA free. And that will be very helpful because, again, a cumulative effect. If you're leaving plastics in a car, that's a big thing in Florida. We leave plastic water bottles. Say you only drank half of it, you went in grocery shopping, you come out, but it's 90 degrees. And you're so thirsty, you just chug that water. You just took all the plastic, that heat that was released, the plastics into the water and then you ingest it. These are things we don't even think about. The same goes for putting a plastic water bottle in a freezer, which is a common practice in Florida. We fill our bottles half full, throw them in the freezer, then you can take them out and you've got ice water with you. So hot it just melts in 10 minutes. Same thing. If you freeze or heat plastic, you will find more estrogens in that. Again, see, it's not a big deal once in a while. So get in the habit of learning to drink from a BPA-free bottle, a stainless bottle, a glass bottle, or any other vessel that does not contain dangerous chemicals like lead and plastics. Then there's other things that we can do to prevent breast cancer, or even the risk of breast cancer. How many people understand why they started putting iodine in salt, like back in the 60s? Thyroid, right? The goiter. Well, iodine used to be in all of our bread products. That's what it was. The iodine, sodium, it was potassium iodine was in our bread products. And then someone made a decision somewhere in the 50s or 60s that we might become iodine toxic. So they took the iodine out and put bromide in instead. Well, bromide doesn't have really a use in the body. And all it does is it takes up the iodine receptors and causes our body to become iodine deficient, or bromide toxic. So then we started to see goiter happening around Michigan, and that's why they call it the goiter belt. That's where they started putting iodized salt. They put iodine, just enough iodine in the salt so that people would shrink their goiter and not have that problem anymore. But what do you think happened over the generations? Nobody was eating salt because the doctors were telling us, don't eat salt. Salt is bad. Salt will raise your blood pressure. Don't do it. So not only did we not have the little minuscule amount of iodine any longer, what were we using? Nothing. So then you start to hear your sisters, your brothers, your mothers, your grandmothers, everyone has hypothyroidism. Makes sense, right? Iodine deficiency. But guess what iodine is good for as well? It prevents breast cancer. Iodine therapy or iodine replacement is probably one of the #1 underdiagnosed prevention tools that you can do for your body. There is a book. If you have your pen, write this down. Dr. Brownstein, David Brownstein, wrote a book. It's called Iodine, Why You Need It, Why You Can't Live Without It. In this book, you'll learn a lot about thyroid, but you'll also learn how iodine can reverse fibrocystic breast disease, cysts in the ovaries, cysts in the skin, cysts in the liver, cystic activity anywhere. Because a cyst is inflammation and it's damage to the tissue. Well, I have several of my patients who have put iodine into their diet for the thyroid prevention and noticed that their fibrocystic breasts are gone. They literally have soft, nice, soft breasts again. And so I challenge every one of you to use that as a learning tool for yourself. I do have a handout up here. Actually, you guys all have a copy on your chair of the proper dosage of how to start iodine. And it's called iodoral, and we use it in 25 milligrams twice a day for about 3 months. And we use it as a loading dose. Think of your body as a sponge, just waiting to suck up all this iodine. It takes about 3 to 5 months depending on how big your body is. And then once you're saturated, it's just like a sponge. You only need a little bit to keep topping off because you're losing just a little bit every day. So we reduced from 25 twice a day to 12.5 milligrams a day. And that's forever, unless you plan on eating seaweed and kelp every day and all those things we don't eat in this country. So when people say, well, do I have to be on this forever? I said, well, it depends on how healthy you want to be. Iodine is very helpful, and when you learn about it, you want to be with it, and you want to put your whole family on it. How about vitamin D? I know Gordon has some vitamin D. You brought some vitamin D today for us. Yes or no? Yes. Coupons for the vitamin D to come to the store. Thank you so much. Vitamin D is made in the skin when we're in the sunshine. Now, we live in the sunshine state, right? We shouldn't have a problem with vitamin D. We have an epidemic of deficiency in D. Vitamin D is one of the most protective hormones. Vitamin D is not a vitamin. It's kind of a misnomer. Vitamin D is a hormone that helps protect cancers from developing cancers, and especially breast cancer. So keeping a vitamin D level in your blood of about 70 to 85 is what most of the literature will say, shooting for about a level of 80. Many, many people have approached me and said, why is it that they keep saying in the news it's dangerous to overdose on vitamin D? There's all these literature articles out there saying don't take more than 1,000 IU of vitamin D. And that's when I say that that article is meant for the layperson who's not working with a healthcare professional getting blood tested. That's so that people are not thinking more is better and taking 20,000 IU every day, because if you did that, you'd be toxic. So when you get your blood work, it's important to ask for that blood test to find out what your vitamin D level is. And if you're going to be in the sun all summer, back down on your supplement. And then when you know that you're going to be indoors more, just go ahead and increase it. So those are the most specific things that I could come up with to teach you about prevention, but I want to turn directly to our nutrition, because those are supplements. Now I want to talk about nutrition. We talked a little bit about the meat and being picky about where to buy it, but what about being picky about where we buy our produce? That's a big one. How challenging is that to find produce that not only is fresh, you want it organic, and it's hard to afford that. You want to make sure that it was grown to the peak ripeness so it has all the nutrients in it, otherwise it's pretty much a dead plant. If it's been off the vine or off the bush for a few days, it's lost its life force. And so we really are challenged as a universe to be able to feed the body the necessary plants that we need to get every single day in a consistent manner. Most people will tell me, I do great on the weekends, we have salads, we have veggie omelets, we do all kinds of things, but all during the week I'm so busy, I can't eat. Well, you're looking at someone like that, okay? I am so busy, but again, we're all so busy. But are we so busy that we can't take care of ourselves to fuel the body, because it's the fuel that we put in that has to counteract all the damage that we get around us? And that's called oxidative stress. Do you know that term, oxidative stress? That is like rusting, like metal rusting in the wet weather. When we rust, we age. So plants are actually anti-aging properties that we have to take into our body every single day so that we can preserve the cells from dying. The cells will replicate every 4 months in our body, but their DNA strands that make up them inside, they snip off. They're called telomeres. And with damage and stress and lack of sleep and lack of good food and overactivity, just general life will snap off those telomeres and cause that cell to age prematurely. That's where you start seeing wrinkles in the face. That's where you start feeling the aches and pains in the body. It's that activity happening that we're not counteracting with something called an antioxidant. Many, many years have been recommended vitamin C, vitamin E, beta carotene, antioxidants. And then a few years ago we heard the articles, oh, antioxidants are horrible. They'll cause heart disease and cancer and all kinds of things. But what they were talking about was they were talking about supplemental antioxidants, taking like high doses of vitamin C, high doses of vitamin E, beta carotene in an unnatural form. But when we get our nutrients from plants, we don't have to choose how much Mother Nature meant for us to get that day. We just need to make sure we have every color of the rainbow coming in every single day. Well, how many of us do that? Really? How many of us do that? I don't. And so that's why I have to recommend something in my practice, which is a whole food concentrate. It's called Juice Plus. You've probably heard about it, but in one fell swoop, every single day, and it's a picture, and you guys take these postcards home. One picture, 6 capsules, and if you don't want to swallow capsules, you put the powders in your smoothie or in your drink or whatever it is you take, but you get all your nutrition that you're not consistently getting, and then you eat what you can in addition. But if you think about what we're eating, we can't even come close to 5, never mind 7 to 13, but there's 26 in here. The more plants we put in our body, the more antioxidants that we have to fight off the oxidative stress, and the less aging is going to happen. When people start to juice, how many people have juicers? Do you guys do any juicing? Good. Juicing is an excellent way to stay very healthy because you're getting your nutrients right into the system. Well, when you don't have time to juice, guess what? That Juice Plus capsule, those powders in there, when taken with water, is a juicing program in a pill. But there are a couple of advantages. First of all, there isn't any sugar in the capsules. So if you're highly sensitive to sugar and inflammation happens when you eat sugar, you get achy or you get tired or you get that low feeling after, you don't do that when you take the powdered form because they remove that sugar on purpose. When we're talking about sugar, how many people know that cancer feeds on sugar? Is that news to anyone here? That's what the food source is for cancer. It's also the food source for yeast. So when there's yeast, and we hear a lot of our friends say, oh, I've got a yeast infection. I've got to go call my doctor. I have a yeast infection. Yeast infections aren't fun. But where there's a yeast infection, there is a brewing environment for cancer to grow in because it's the same food. So if your body's overgrown with yeast, then you're overgrown with cancer food. And that's important. So that's where people start to learn about, well, what can I do to prevent yeast? Well, first of all, decreasing the sugar. And so I always recommend juicing, but I don't want people juicing fruit. I want them juicing greens. I want them juicing kale. I want them juicing whatever it is. And Cricket sitting up here saying, she juices everything. But you know, juicing is an awesome thing to do because when you're juicing, you're not eating meat. You're eating plants. And you're eating plants with their nourishment going right into the cells. Well, that's why I wanted to share with you that if you're not up to juicing and you're not up to that task, that taking the Juice Plus every single day, you can still juice, but juice more of the veggies and leave the fruits up to the Juice Plus. Now, leading to my next topic would be, the next prevention tool would be probiotics. How many in this room take probiotics? Probiotics, if you don't know what probiotics are, what they are is good bacteria for the gut and the whole body, but they grow in the gut. When we can grow good bacteria in the gut, then we can crowd out that yeast that might be growing in there from too much sugar. So it's like a little domino effect. So when you're someone who wants to take an active role in changing the way you've been eating, maybe really reversing the way your body fights off disease and things, decreasing sugar is the first step. But then adding a probiotic into the body every day on an empty stomach, first thing in the morning and or last thing before bed. It's like you're putting in a fresh scoop of produce that's been rotting in your fridge, but putting it in your compost bin and stirring it up. You know how great that compost bin looks after a couple of weeks of putting your scraps in there? Well, that's what happens inside, but you can get it in a powder form or a capsule form, and it's going to grow a great compost bin inside your gut. When there's a great bacteria count in the gut, nothing else can grow in there. There's no room for it to grow. I always give an example of having a fresh plot of land in your backyard and rototilling a garden, and then getting so busy you forget the seeds. You didn't bring the seeds with you, but you've got this freshly rototilled lawn, you know, beautiful, beautiful loam. It's beautiful, dark, rich. There's worms in it. It's all ready. But then you go on a trip, and you come back a week later. You didn't plant your seeds in there, but what's going on? There's a bunch of stuff growing in there, right? Nothing you wanted. That's the same in our gut. So if we don't put on purpose the plants or the nutrients and the bacteria to grow in our garden, then everything that we don't want will grow there. Believe me, it will grow there. So when you get that little bout of diarrhea or you've got that upset stomach and you go, geez, I must have eaten something wrong, think about it. Have you had that gut pain on and off for a couple of days or a couple of weeks? Get on some probiotics and it goes away. Because you're telling whatever's in there, get out, you don't belong here, and what that will do is improve your immune system. And so when I recommend probiotics to people, it's not just when they're on antibiotics. Because if you take an antibiotic, what do? You kill off the bad bacteria, but you're killing off all the good stuff too. So if you've worked really hard at trying to grow that good compost bin in there, and you've taken a Z-Pak in the last week, you're walking around with a sterile gut. It's now empty. It's that rodent-tilled garden just waiting for the weeds to grow in it, so you've got to get busy. And I always say 2 months is about what it takes to really focus on getting that gut full. Because what happens? How many times have you had a bacterial infection, say a bronchitis, and you go to your provider and they give you an antibiotic, and then you get over that, and 2 weeks later you catch the cold from your husband, and you're sick again, and you go, why am I sick again? I just got over this. Why do you think? Your immune system is depleted. So get really busy, and I always use the Juice Plus, especially when people are sick, because I don't want them eating a lot of food. I want them healing. I want them getting nutrients but little food, because I want the energy to go to healing the body. So I tell them, take Juice Plus every 2 hours for about 2 days, and don't eat very much. Just do the chicken soup or the broth, the broth, but let the body get a lot of antioxidants so it tells that bacteria or that virus to go away. And you can do that at home as well, but juicing is a lot more work. And it's not practical. I mean, most people are not successful at it long term. So then there's one more piece that I will talk about before I move on to the imaging topic, and that is the topic of sea salt. We talked a little bit about the iodine being put in table salt, and then we talked about how nobody wants us to use it. So I'm here to tell you that there is a salt that you should be using, and you should use it every single day on purpose. It's called Celtic sea salt or Hawaiian sea salt. These salts have 80 vital minerals in them. Table salt has sodium and chloride. So if I want to salt my food, this stuff tastes delicious. It does not have iodine in it. So don't forget that. You have to take your iodine. I have heard that there are some companies putting iodine in sea salt, but they're not putting it in this sea salt, which has the highest mineral count. You see how wet this salt is? It's very heavy. It's actually, you have to grind it in the grinder. The wetter the content, the wetter the salt, the more minerals it holds. So we have seen people using sea salt to lower their blood pressure. Does that make sense to you? Like taking salt? You have the buffering of the minerals to offset the sodium, so it releases the fluid from the body. Many people can get off of water pills or diuretics by using sea salt. And many times people will say, wow, I started using the sea salt and my rings come off my fingers so much easier. I don't understand that. I'm eating all this salt. And if salt is not your thing because you haven't acquired a taste for it, try putting some in your water. Just a little bit. Not enough to make it taste bad, but just a little bit, a couple of grinds in your water. Put it on your food. Put it in your food. Just get it in. About a 1/4 teaspoon to a 1/2 teaspoon a day is what our bodies need that. And then make sure that the water you're drinking, of course, is going to be filtered or pH balanced, even better, making alkaline water. And that's what adding the sea salt to the water actually does, is it alkalinizes the water. And that is one thing that when you learn about pH balance, cancer only lives in an acidic environment. Our bodies get acidic when we eat meat or sugar. So when we eat plants and use sea salt and minerals like that, we alkalinize the body. And that helps to prevent it. Any questions right this moment about what I've covered? Because I'm going to move on. Yes, Cricket?
Doesn't dairy make your body acidic also?
Dairy foods is an animal protein. It's exactly what we were talking about. Yes, dairy is very mucus producing. It has a lot of chemicals in it if it's not organic. And it is one of the highly allergic foods that people have. NSA, the company that makes Juice Plus, they have their own growers. And so many of them are grown in an organic method, but because organics is very hard to test the soil for, 7 years they have to test the soil. And so they're working on really making more and more of the ingredients organic, and they did announce that recently. There is organic kale for sure, because they grow all their kale themselves. They're the highest producer of kale in the world. Juice Plus is distributed in 22 countries, and so you know the countries are very strict about allowing any kind of a supplement. Well, that's the best part. Juice Plus isn't a supplement, it has a nutrition label, and it's just food. It's just confusing when it's packaged in a pill and people think it's a vitamin. But it's whole food nutrition, just like a juicing program. So it's like, picture a big juicer shoved down into these little capsules, and that's the benefit that you get. But it's backed by the research. There's 22 studies now, published gold standard, so that we are sure that what we get is pesticide, herbicide free.